Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cheryl, and today I'm here to bring you my non-spoiler-free review for Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. Now, normally, if you've been on my channel for a while, you'll know that I do pretty much every single review spoiler-free, just because I feel like that reaches a wider audience. Now, if you do want a spoiler or in-depth review of any of books I've done before, just leave me comments down below. Never hesitate to ask for that, but overall, I try to just keep all my reviews spoiler-free, because, like I said, I want as many people to watch as possible. That being said, this book. Now, this was not my first time reading this. I was like many people, and in my youth, probably around 2009 or so, 2009-10, when this book came out and was really popular, I was obsessed. I was one of those people that was just absolutely obsessed with vampires and werewolves and Twilight, and I couldn't get enough of it. And then, of course, I was one of those people that also went through the phase where I absolutely hated this book and this series, and arguably that was like probably one of the most pretentious phases of my life, where I just hated this book and anything and anyone associated with it. I've, of course, moved on past that, and really, I do appreciate this book for the nostalgia factor it has. But, this was my first time rereading it since I read it the original time, way back when. But I also did something I've never done with reading before, and that, unless it was for school, and that is I tabbed the hell out of this book. Like, look at this. And I'm gonna be honest, none of these tabs represent anything good. Yeah, they're all for things that I found problematic in some way or another. So, without further ado, I guess let's just get into it. So I think I had originally rated Twilight fairly high on Goodreads, and then the time in my life when I really started using Goodreads was my anti-Twilight phase, so this had a 1-star rating on Goodreads for me. And after reading it, I did not increase that, and that's just because, as everyone knows, Goodreads does not allow you to do half-star ratings. This book I gave a 1.5 star out of 5. The only reason it got that extra half-star was the nostalgia factor, and the fact that despite everything I'm about to talk about, I read almost all of it in one day, because it's not that I couldn't put it down, it's just, it was so interesting reliving the experience, especially because it had been so long since I read it, and it was interesting revisiting these characters in this, and it's been so long that I had no idea really what the plot was anymore. The plot of, like, this book was just muddled with the rest of, like, the series. I couldn't remember what happened in this book versus another book, but yeah. Alright, let's start off with the biggest and most obvious, and that is the writing. Boy, oh boy. The writing in this book was not good. And don't get me wrong, I've read books before that I've really enjoyed and they've not had the best writing. And this really isn't what has bothered me so much in this story, or this book, but I could not include it, if that makes sense. So basically, my biggest issue with the writing is, first off, how many times are you going to make your characters sigh? Literally, like, every other character, like, dialogue, like, every other line of dialogue ended with, I sighed, he sighed, she sighed. I'm just... that aside, the writing was just awkward at times, the pacing was really weird, and the thing that drove me the most crazy was the fact that it felt like every 150 or so words, Stephanie Meyer, like, picked a random word from a paragraph, put it into a thesaurus, found a word that means the same thing, but it would never be used in that context, and put it in there. That's what these blue tabs are for. So it didn't happen that often, but when it did, it was really jarring. For example, I took up my book industriously to do some math homework, or I asked artlessly. The words do make sense. It's not like she's using the wrong words in these situations, but it just was odd because it didn't fit the rest of the flow of the book. And what was odd is just seeing such, like, I don't even know the word to describe it. When I was reading it felt very pretentious language. So very pretentious language coupled with really bad writing, it was a very odd combo, and it definitely stuck out to me. But like I said, it really just feels like she just took a thesaurus and was like, let's change this word to this one. this word to this one, but only did it with like every 50 pages. Another issue I had is one that I found with a lot of books, so this is not unique to Twilight at all, and that is super, super over-descriptive language and info dumping. Now, this was odd because the first, like, third of the book was full of this. Like, when Bella was walking down a path to an office, I not only knew the shape and color of the bushes and the rocks that she was walking on and the building, and I had really in-depth descriptions of everything she passed, whether or not it be the trucks, the cars, the sky, the characters she's met. Really, really in-depth descriptions, like over the top, where you're just like, oh my god, I don't need to know all of this detail. But then, like, the next part of the book, the rest of it, there was like no descriptions. Hardly any. Basically, she like tried so hard, I guess, to set up the scene of the book and set up like everything in the first third of the book that the rest of it just, she didn't feel the need to add any descriptors. And so basically the rest of it was filled with dialogue / kind of action-y events as opposed to any sort of descriptions, and that was really odd to me that she didn't try to pace that out at all. Alright, and now we're going to get into the things that really irked me. And I've got a few of those. First off, this book is chock full of, I'm not like other girls. I'm so different. I'm so boring. I'm so plain. I'm so quirky. Like, that kind of thing. And, oh, that is probably one of the most irritating things about a book. I have read books before where I have read the line, I'm not like other girls, and I've put down the book because I ain't about that. And so it was hard to push myself through this at times because it was very, very difficult, because Bella is not only described as being super average looking. Basically, all you know about Bella is that she is really skinny, very white, she has brown hair, and that she's average looking and awkward. And you definitely know that she's clumsy because guess what? Of the green tabs, 90% of those are fucking references to her being clumsy. Like, don't get me wrong, I am a very, very clumsy person myself. I trip over nothing, and maybe if someone narrated my life, it would be the same way. But, oh my god. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous the amount of times that she is referenced to being clumsy. Whether or not it's Edward being like, now don't fall down, or her being like, well, I can't do that, I'll fall down, or something. I'm just like, oh my god, stop. But, so, if that coupled with the fact that, you know, she doesn't know she's beautiful, but every boy loves her. Now, the last color I have to talk about of the tabs is the pink one, and that is definitely, I would say, the most prominent, especially the second half of the book, and that are things that I found problematic. Now, the reason that it is most prominent in, like, the second half of the book is because that is when Edward really takes a stance in the book and really becomes a character, as opposed to just some background figure that Bella obsesses over. But let's talk about why this book is problematic. I know that these discussions have been said many times before, and I'm probably not bringing anything unique to this, but my god. There is so much girl hate in the beginning of this book, and that is something I definitely did not pick up on the first time I read it. Now, when I read it the first time, I recognized the fact that, you know, the creepy behaviors that I'll talk about later are not okay, but I didn't realize how much girl hate there was in this book. And that's not unique to this book. There are a lot of YA books that kind of fall victim to this, or I don't even think that's the right phrase. There's a lot of YA books who use this and have a lot of this, and it drives me crazy. So basically, Bella is super awkward, you know, every boy loves her, and then she makes some friends, and not only is she kind of nasty about them behind their back, but they're all super nasty about Bella, of course. Until they get the boy they like, and they realize that Bella is not interested in the boy that they like, and then they're suddenly super friendly to her. It just drove me crazy because it's implying that girls will only be nice to each other as long as the man they like likes them back. So what if that wasn't the case? Like, is every girl in this universe going to be awful to Bella just because the boys like her? I don't get it. It just, There was so much unnecessary girl hate that it drove me crazy. The second problematic thing is one that I've mentioned, and this kind of ties into the one I talked about, or the point I talked about before, which is she doesn't know she's beautiful, is that literally every man in this universe, basically, except for her father and Dr. Cullen, and I guess Jacob's dad, they all love Bella. Literally, the guy who, like, first introduced himself to her liked her. Then Mike, who was, like, the biggest throwaway character, likes her. And then there was the dude that almost hit her with a van. He liked her and asked her out to prom. That's 3 guys alone that asked her out to prom. And then, of course, there's Edward. And then, of course, there's Jacob. Oh, my God. Especially if she's so just uninteresting and so boring and so average looking. Like, if she's as uninteresting of a character as she makes herself seem, then why the fuck do all these men, like, suddenly fawn over them? Especially, there was a line in it that was spoken by Edward where he was like, you should have seen, or you should have heard what all of, basically, every man in the school was thinking when you arrived. Like, what the fuck? It doesn't make sense. It is just the biggest, like, jerk-off fantasy, I guess. And then, of course, the biggest problematic aspect of this book, I think, is the fact that, like, Edward is not romantic. He is creepy, and he is abusive, and he is domineering, and oh my god. I don't even know where to begin. So let's start with the most obvious. Breaking into someone's house, watching them while they sleep, is not romantic. Watching anyone while they sleep, regardless of if you've broken in their house or not, is not romantic. That is creepy as fuck. Even if I woke up and I saw my fiance just staring at me like this, he's like, I like you. I like watching you while you sleep. I would be like, peace out, I'm done. Because it's not romantic. That is creepy. I'm sorry. And to know that he broke in and, like, especially because he's got, like, magical superhuman abilities because he's a vampire or whatnot, if he wanted to hurt her, there's literally nothing she could do to stop him. And so that's just the concept of that. And the fact that it is so glossed over in the book, where she's like, I know I should be upset, but I'm flattered. Like, no. And then, like, the fact that he has got so many mood swings, where one moment he is, like, super happy-go-lucky, and the next moment he's, like, yelling. And the fact that, like, Bella multiple times throughout the book says that she can't keep up with his wild, unpredictable moods. That's not good. I can see what Stephenie Meyer was doing, and that she was trying to make him a little more, like, well-rounded, I guess. A little more human. But it's not, because almost always, even though he said it wasn't, he directed his anger at Bella and, like, took it out on her, and once again, he could have killed her, like that. So, I'm sorry, that's not okay. And then, of course, there's, like, the super duper over possessiveness, where once Edward has decided that Bella is his, no one can approach her. He gets grumbly, he gets angry, of course, and then, of course, Bella has to apologize. Bella apologized for so many of Edward's shitty behaviors in the book. Like, that's not how life works. I'm not going to apologize because someone I know is awful. Especially, I'm not going to apologize if someone I know is awful to me. That's not how that works. And that is, like, all Bella does in this book. Is Edward will be like, ah! And he'll, like, yell. And she'll be like, I'm sorry I upset you. So, yeah, there is definitely a lot of issues surrounding that relationship. And I know it doesn't really get better in the rest of the books, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, Jacob becomes a character who... I remember absolutely hating Jacob when I was reading the series the first time, because Jacob is, like, the epitome of, I like you, so you are obligated to like me back, and if you don't, you're a shitty person. He's, like, the epitome of, like, the nice guy, friend zone trash boy. Getting out of the problematic things, some other things I didn't like about the book is the fact that, like, the character motivations just really didn't make sense. Especially, like, Bella's suicide mission, like, at the end. Oh my god, what the fuck? Like, it didn't make sense. I get that she thought she had whatever his name is, the hunter dude. I get that she thought he had her mom, and so she was like, oh my god, I need to save my mom. I can't have everyone close to me get hurt. That makes sense. That's fine. You know, you're dealing with really, like, supernatural creatures, like, who could kill your parents at a drop of a hat. So, yeah, I get it. But what I don't get is the fact that she is fawned over Edward and the rest of the Cullens for being these super strong, magnificent beings, I guess. But she doesn't trust them to handle it. She's like, oh, I don't want anyone to get hurt, so I'm gonna go let myself die so that no one else has to get hurt. She obviously knew that there was nothing she could do against this creature because he, was the epitome of the supreme hunter or whatever. But it just didn't make sense why she did that. It also doesn't make sense to me why the fuck all of the Cullens just, keep going through high school. You could be curing cancer or something with that amount of, brain power. And you can do it anonymously. Obviously, this book is full of really weak and stereotypical characters. Bella being the most weak character. She is literally a shell that the reader is supposed to imagine themselves in. And that is really poor writing. She has, no personality at all. She just doesn't make the right decisions, like I've said. Edward is just the overpossessive creep. Jacob is the nice guy. Charlie, her dad, is really the only redeemable one in the series because he's just kind of there. He's just kind of oh, I'm sorry. He's just trying to be a good father. And if I remember correctly, later on in the series, when he finds out they're all vampires, he's just kind of alright, I guess I can deal with this. He's the most, normal one, I guess. You've got Jacob's dad, Billy, who's just, way overstepping his boundaries. I know he thinks he's protecting Bella, but paying Jacob to crash her prom, Mike is there just to show the fact that Bella is desirable, and all the female characters are there just for the girl hate, it feels like. So overall, this book was really boring in the first half. Really, for it being almost a 600-page book, the first half of the book is just filled with her going to school. Do you know how many, there's so many scenes of her just doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it just, as she slowly descends into madness, basically, over Edward Cullen, of course. And honestly, the epilogue, if the epilogue wasn't there, the book would have felt very cut off. It wouldn't have felt like an ending. It would have felt very abrupt. So I think she only has the epilogue there for that reason, and I don't think that's a very good reason to include an epilogue. It also doesn't really make sense for there to be an epilogue given that there's other books in the series, but I digress. That is my very long-winded, very spoiler-filled review of Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. If you haven't picked up this book before, I've spoiled everything for you, so you probably don't need to by this point. But it is an adventure to read, and if you can get past, somehow, with all the things I've mentioned, more power to you. I really doubt I'll be continuing the rest of the series unless I decide to do all of them this way, because I remember even less about the rest of the books. If you want me to continue this little thing and do all of the Twilight books, just leave me a comment down below and I will be happy to, because I don't even know if that is something people would want to see, because this book has been out forever. But as always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!